break it down. And break it down. And break it down. Hello, everybody. Hi, all.
What's up, guys?
It's been a minute.
Come on in. Come on in.
Come on in. Get comfy. Get
Come on
comfy.
in. It's the last stop on our... Fuck, there's a hair in my face that's really bugging me. It's the last stop of our digital voting tour.
Digital voting tour.
What the fuck, guys?
Who's ready?
I hope everyone watching right now is registered to vote because obviously it takes 2 fucking seconds and it's important. So go do it. Honestly, get off this live if you haven't registered to vote and go register.
Go register to vote.
That's more important.
Yes.
But if you're registered to vote, if you're ready to go, and come back after you register.
Yes.
If you're registered to vote, you're ready to go, let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. We're going to meet up with Ben Sheehan. He is amazing. He's an author of this incredible book called OMG WTF Does the Constitution Actually Say? And he's going to be breaking it down. We're going to be asking him all sorts of questions that he is an expert in. So yeah, if you guys have questions, throw them in the chat. Ben will be happy to answer them.
Yes.
And we are excited to learn. So
Yes.
learn with us.
Okay, so we're going to add Ben in now. We're going to turn off.
Here he is. We're going to turn off our techno jams. We're more focused here. Okay. Ben, we added you. There we go. Hey.
Hi!
What's up?
Oh man, I wish every single Instagram live I did started with a dance party. I would
Yes.
be enjoying them way more than I have been.
It's a firm rule here. It's how we kick
You gotta
things off.
spice it up a bit, you know? Thank you so much for being here. We're so excited. Obviously, we talked to you yesterday a little bit, but so stoked to be going live. And we just wanted to start off with you kind of just like introducing yourself, telling us about your book and why you became so interested in the Constitution.
Sure. So I grew up in DC and I was kind of around politics from a young age, so that sort of gave me a bit of a window into it. And my parents gave me civics lessons over dinner at the dinner table every night. And so I sort of got this, I had the privilege of getting this information at a really young age. But after I studied it in school, I moved out to Los Angeles and I worked at a company called Funny or Die. And I made videos with people like Will Ferrell and Adam McKay. And some of the videos that we made were trying to get people to understand political issues better. Because if you didn't get government education in school and you don't know how the country works or certain issues work, then it's hard to participate. It's hard to get involved. So that was sort of my background. And I did a lot of get out the vote work in 2016. And then I started an organization in 2018 called Oh My God, What the Fuck? And it's actually an acronym, OMGWTF, for Ohio, Michigan, Georgia, Wisconsin, Texas, and Florida. And during the 2018 election, we did work in those states and we told people why they should care about state attorneys general and secretaries of state and governors. And what I learned is a lot of people didn't even know they had those positions in those states. They didn't know they had an attorney general. They didn't know they had a secretary of state, let alone what those people did. So it's really hard to care about a job you don't even understand or know exists.
Right.
But it's not our fault because the last many decades we've been cutting civics and government education in school. In fact, only 8 states require a year of civics or government today. So we all kind of feel stupid for not knowing this, but it's not our fault because we barely teach it anymore. So we can't be stupid for something that wasn't taught to us like it was taught to previous generations. So I thought I would try to help out by going back to our founding document, the Constitution, which is very old. It's hard to understand. The grammar's weird. The punctuation's strange. The way it's written feels like a totally different time, and try to make sense of it because the information still governs us. So I wrote this book called Oh My God, What the Fuck Does the Constitution Actually Say? And if you don't know what's in it, then this is hopefully a very accessible guide. It's the original document alongside my paraphrase for like 2020 of what it says. I tried to do it in the least boring way possible. There's breakout asides, you know, if you need to know a little bit of history, why this is the way it is. If you don't understand certain terms, I define them. If something doesn't apply anymore, I tell you that. And sometimes I give my own opinion, but I clearly mark it so that people know it's my thoughts.
Right. That's amazing. Oh my God. I feel like obviously like the Constitution, it's such a loaded, like I feel intimidated even being like, what is the Constitution? Because it's like this map, it's just like, it feels overwhelming, right? So I'm going to be reading your book. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I
I'm
encourage
definitely reading that.
everybody on the live to please go and read the book, educate yourself as much as possible, because it's kind of insane to think that the majority of people don't understand how the country they live in is governed and how it works. And like myself completely included,
Yeah.
like it's been a total, I think this year has been such a wake up call for everybody for like many reasons, especially to understand how we're governed and like how all of these positions work and how they affect us. And so
there's definitely been a lot of moments this year that have made me think like, because I feel like there's so many things we're seeing happening in this country that make us go, how is that even possible? Like, how are we even to this point? And I think, it's because we've been really kind of ignoring a lot of what's happening at the local level. And a lot of people aren't voting at the local level. And that's how you influence things to actually change. And that's why if you're not involved in every aspect with politics from the ground up, you're going to be pretty shocked at what's going down at the very top sometimes. And so I want to ask you, I mean, obviously with the presidential election coming up, I want to talk about that with you. Also, I want to ask you about, some of these things, these major pressing issues that have been talked about this year with the Black Lives Matter movement and climate change, and kind of like what offices of the government like affect these things. Like, how do we influence how these things are handled in our country?
Sure. So, I think we have a tendency to focus on the federal government all the time, right? We sort of hear about the president all the time. We think the president does everything. We hear about the Supreme Court. We think the Supreme Court does everything. Truth is that the federal government is limited in scope, and it's limited by the Constitution. And so many of the things that you just mentioned, the people who affect them are at the state and local level. So let's start with climate change, right? Certainly our Congress, our federal legislature, the House and the Senate, have the ability to pass laws to fight climate change. We can use our tax dollars and incentivize things like a transition to green energy, create green jobs, phase out carbon pollution, and make people, hold people accountable then for violating environmental laws. But a lot of this can also be done at the state and local level, and our governors can enforce environmental laws. Our state attorneys general can enforce environmental laws. Our state House and state Senate can pass laws in our own state to help incentivize these new energies and fight against climate change and hold people accountable. Even mayors. There are mayors in small cities throughout the Midwest that have helped transition their cities entirely to green energy. And so there are small towns with like 1,000 people, 2,000 people in states like Kansas and Texas that have transitioned to fully renewable energy, and they're completely carbon neutral. So we're already seeing the local level and state governments start to do this. I mean, I live in California, and our governor announced, I think it was yesterday, that in 15 years we will have transitioned completely away from gasoline-based cars and fossil fuel-based vehicles to renewable energy vehicles. I myself, not to brag, I drive a hydrogen car. It's very cool. I go fill it up with hydrogen gas, and it drips out a little bit of water, and that's it. But we can do this stuff at the state and the local level.
That's amazing.
So that's climate change, and pay attention to your governors, your mayors, your state attorney general who enforces environmental laws. If a company pollutes in your state, the state attorney general can sue them and hold them accountable for violating those laws. And then let's talk about the Black Lives Matter movement, which you brought up, and obviously in the wake of the decision that happened yesterday, I believe, where the officers who killed Breonna Taylor are not being held accountable for murder. There are offices at the state and local level that can hold police officers accountable for violating the laws. And those offices are four specifically. The first one is district attorney, where you elect somebody to basically be, if the state attorney general is the lawyer for your state, like all the people in your state who fight, on behalf of the people, the district attorney is the lawyer for your county. So all the people in the county basically have a shared lawyer, the district attorney. And so in a situation like this, where you have officers who clearly broke the law, committed this heinous act, they can be held accountable by the district attorney. And if the district attorney doesn't prosecute them, the state attorney general can. So these are roles that can hold officers accountable. Beyond those two, you also have police chiefs, right? Now, police chiefs are not directly elected. They're appointed by the mayor. So if you want to have a change in, police chief, you should care who your mayor is, because that's the person who has the power to appoint that role. And the last one I'll mention is sheriff, because sheriff is the head of the law enforcement in, again, your county, and has a massive amount of power when it comes to deciding how police departments run, how laws are enforced, how basically, the operations of county law enforcement runs. So for an issue like this, it really is a state and local issue. So paying attention to our county government, our city government, again, we're so focused on the federal level all the time. When it comes to an issue like this, it's really the power to affect it is at the state and the local level.
That's so, I love the way you're stating this, because it feels like really attainable when you put it like that, right? Like, it doesn't feel like this big thing in the sky that we don't have control over. Like, I think it's so important to, like, for us included, to be like, oh, like, this was something we were kind of talking about yesterday, and Lisa touched on it a little bit too earlier, of like, it's almost like running a marathon, right? Like, you can't run a marathon tomorrow if you haven't been training for the marathon. In the same way that, like, if you haven't been paying attention to, obviously,
your local government.
Yeah, your local government, obviously, still vote absolutely for the president. It's really important. But, like, the way we can be, really seeing change, it's like you got to start at the local level and see who's around you and we were even talking yesterday, kind of being like, it's so interesting to see, how we are so affected by our local leaders with COVID, with like the governor of California and his calls on, the stay-at-home order and everything, and the mayor. And so I think it's just like really important and very eye-opening to be like, oh, those people control those things. And it's like, it all starts here, and then it really kind of goes up to the top. And if we are doing our part to be informed about who's locally running as a nation, then we can get up to the president and really have someone in office who we really support and who's actually, leading in ways that we agree with and in changing, the future of the country. So I think that that's really digestible the way you're putting it. And I think it's really important. So thank you so much for that. As far as, the passing of RBG, a lot of people are afraid of like what that means, because she was so progressive in a lot of ways, right? And they're very, very concerned about who the Trump administration is going to put in office now. What is a Supreme Court justice, and what do they do, and why are people so afraid?
Sure. So a Supreme Court justice. So we have, just for anyone who forgets it from civics class, we have three branches of government: the legislative, and this is the federal level, right? The legislative is Congress, which is the House and the Senate. So the House and the Senate together is Congress. That's one branch, and they make the laws. They write our laws. The second is the executive branch, which is the president, the vice president, all the members of the cabinet. And the third one is the courts, and it's at the top is the Supreme Court. And basically, we have 9 Supreme Court justices, and their job ultimately is to decide what the law means. If there's a question around the law, if there's confusion around what it actually says, they're the ones who interpret the laws and establish what the laws are. And the same thing with the words in the Constitution. They also handle things like, treaties, cases with ambassadors and ministers from other countries. They handle all these other types of cases too. But the real core job is to say what the Constitution says, what the law says, and what it means. And these people serve, in most cases, for life. And it's a really powerful job. And, it's the only branch of the federal government that we have no say directly in. And even though we don't technically vote for the president and the vice president, we still vote in our state. And our state uses that to determine, the electors in the Electoral College. So we can at least vote in the process somewhere. We vote directly for our senators and our representatives. But we have no say, indirectly really or otherwise, when it comes to the appointment of justices and their confirmation. And how it works is the president nominates somebody, and the Senate confirms that person. And what's really interesting about the Supreme Court, there are some very weird things in this book. Again, for anyone who joined recently, this is what it looks like.
Please get the book. Quickly, people get your book? Because I saw people asking.
Anywhere. So it's on any everywhere from Barnes & Noble to Amazon to IndieBound. If you want to support a local bookstore in your community, Bookshop, IndieBound, basically anywhere you can get books online, you can get it. There's also a Spanish version for people who speak Spanish.
Amazing.
If you prefer Spanish, there's a version for you too. But what is really strange about the Supreme Court is that everyone watching this right now, congratulations, you are qualified under the Constitution to be a Supreme Court justice, because there are no qualifications whatsoever in the Constitution to be a Supreme Court justice. You don't have to be a citizen, you don't have to be a specific age, you don't have to be a judge, you don't have to be a lawyer. So everyone is eligible, so you can convince the president to nominate you and the Senate to confirm you. Congratulations, you're on the Supreme Court. Another thing that's really strange about it is we don't have to have 9 justices. In the history of our country, we've had many different numbers. We started with 6, and then we went down to 5, and then we went up to 10, and then down to 7, and then 9, and then 10, and then back to 9 again. So since 1869, we've had 9 justices. But all it takes to change the number of justices on the Supreme Court is a law. So Congress, all I have to do is pass a law, and the president can sign it, or Congress can pass a law without the president. If 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate pass a bill, it becomes a law, regardless of what the president thinks. So Congress could change this tomorrow, or the next day, or next week. So we're not stuck or married or beholden to this. This is something we can change quickly with action from Congress. Another weird thing about the Supreme Court is they don't actually have the power in the Constitution to strike down laws if they think they're unconstitutional. So if they, hear a case and they rule a certain way and go, we don't think that's constitutional, they just started striking down the laws since 1803, and we all kind of went along with it and didn't fight it, and it just set a precedent, but it's actually not in the document. So there's a bunch of weird things about the Supreme Court. But why it's so important is because, again, these people serve for life. And so they're deciding what the laws mean. They're deciding what the Constitution means and says, and they are going to be on the court for life. And technically, it's during good behavior. So obviously, yes, justices could die, as sadly just happened. They could quit. They could voluntarily step down, or they could get impeached and removed. And other than that, you basically can serve for life. So we're talking about someone who's going to have power for, decades to decide what the law means and what the Constitution means. So it's really important to make sure we have people who have integrity, who are looking at things in a fair and balanced way. In fact, the whole point of the Supreme Court, and the reason we don't elect these people, was so that they weren't beholden to partisanship. The idea was that they're beholden to the Constitution and they're beholden to federal laws that are constitutional. And instead of creating a position that could be influenced by, the partisan whims of the day, or, obviously they didn't have social media, but the trending, whatever's trending on social media, or whatever the media is telling, by not making these people elected, they basically are supposed to be above all the partisanship, above all the bickering, the fighting, and really think about the long-term best interest of the country. And so it's really important to have a balanced Supreme Court. You're not supposed to have a court that's tilted one way or another. So, pay attention to your Senate elections, because depending on what happens these next few weeks, whether or not a new justice is added now, whether or not another opening happens next year, same thing for lower level judges, circuit courts and district courts. A very small number of cases actually get to the Supreme Court. It's 0.1%. Most of them are decided in either district court or circuit court. So make sure you vote for senators who you trust and who you think have good integrity in voting for justices, because there's a really good chance that your senator will vote for or against someone, and that will have a huge impact on your life.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, that's so interesting. The idea that we don't, as a people, have control of voting in the Supreme Court, right? And you're saying it's almost supposed to act as a check and balance of people who are maybe influenced by their campaigns and different interests and different things, but the Supreme Court's supposed to really check that. It's all really interesting to me, because it feels like we should have a say in that if it's the checks and balances of a democracy. I don't know, it's all really interesting. I think the main takeaway that is really sticking with me in all of this is you have to start again locally, because that it's just such a ripple
Yeah.
effect to the top. And like,
It's like if you want to live in a country that, you know, goes by the same values that you have in your life, you have to get involved, because if you're not voting, you can guarantee that there's at least a decent amount of people that have very different values than you who are voting.
Yeah.
And so if you're not and they are, it's going to travel all the way up. So I think it kind of applies to a lot of things. Like, it all starts at home. It all starts at the ground level, and you got to be involved and look around you. I think your local leaders are a lot more tangible and accessible than obviously the president of the United States. So know who that is, and
Yeah.
know what elections are coming up, and be involved, because it will ripple up to the top.
yeah. And I think,
And I
we,
just want
you
to,
know,
oh yeah, go ahead.
sorry, no, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say that, you know, even though we don't vote directly for judges at the federal level, we do at the state level and the local level. So we actually, in many states, if not all states, you can vote for your state Supreme Court judges. So the state Supreme Court, those judges we can have a say in voting for, our county judges, local judges. So even while we don't have a direct say in who are in appointing someone to the Supreme Court, we do have a say in state and local judges.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I
That's
think,
great to know.
you know, so many of our followers are, you know, either first-time voters, maybe second-time voters. And I think that, like, the youth right now is so powerful. I think that as long as we just, like, keep educating ourselves and knowing these things, like, we really can change the people locally, and then upward to have, like, a president that we all really are excited about and fights for a democracy, you know? So I think it's all really interesting. As kind of the last question, because I think we've covered so much of these, what's the best and easiest way to stay informed locally? Because personally, I feel like I don't even remember, like, I don't even, like, have a memory of, like, local elections when I was younger, or, like, even my parents going to those. Like, I feel kind of, like, a bit in the dark about that. So how do we,
like, tap into that?
Up to date?
Sure. So one good resource is a site called Ballotpedia. And what you can do is you can go to Ballotpedia and type in your state and, you know, elections 2020, or even Google, you know, the name of your state, 2020 elections Ballotpedia, and there'll be a web page. And you can go through and look at all the offices that are up in your state this year. It'll tell you, obviously, you know, if you have a Senate race up this year, it'll tell you, you know, who those people are. Obviously, we all know the presidential races this year. It'll tell you, you know, who, if you have a governor's race up, if you have an attorney general race up. And if you want to know who your representatives are, your state legislators and your federal legislators, you can look that up. I really recommend a site called openstates.org. It's really simple. You just go there, you type in your address, and it tells you who your state representatives and your state senators are, so you know who they are. Follow them on social media. You know, write down their phone numbers, write down their emails. But specifically for social media, what's really cool is that an organization called Countable told me, because I asked them this question, right? I was like, do phone calls matter? If I'm texting someone, like my legislator, are they going to listen to me? Like, I'm just one person, right? If I'm, like, showing up at their office, you know, knocking on doors, one of the most impactful ways to get your legislators' attention is to follow them on Twitter and tweet a video of yourself talking to them, at them, telling them what you want them to do. Because unlike a text message, which is, you know, a private one-to-one communication, or a phone call or an email, you are talking to this person directly on blast. Anyone who follows you can see this. People who follow them can see this. People can search this and find this. And if you're not violating Twitter's terms of service, it stays up forever. So everyone can see you telling them to do something and then knowing if they don't do it. It's a very, very powerful way. Other than voting, it's probably the most impactful way to get your representatives' attention. So use social media, use videos, you know, talk to them directly. But, you know, I do want to leave, you know, your followers and your fans and your community with this one story really quickly. So we often think about politics as being something that is for older people, right? We think of old people, often old white people, old white men in politics, right?
Right.
The reason we have a 26th Amendment giving voting rights protections to people 18 and up, and the reason we have a 27th Amendment are because of college students. It is because of college students protesting during the Vietnam War that basically said, you're sending us off to fight, but we don't have a say in electing who's sending us off to fight. We think that's fucked up. We should have a say. And they protested in the streets and they put pressure on the officials. And guess what? An amendment was added to the Constitution directly off of those protests in 1971. In the 80s, a college student at the University of Texas found this amendment, right? That was proposed a long time ago. Some states had agreed to it, some didn't. But it hadn't expired. And so he wrote a paper about it and he got a C and he was mad. And so he appealed the grade and they said, no, it's a C. And he got really mad and he started writing his state legislators. And over 10 years, he wrote so many legislatures across the country that they started ratifying the amendment. And in 1992, the 27th Amendment was added to the Constitution. And it says that if Congress is giving themselves a pay raise, they can't just give themselves a pay raise and it takes effect tomorrow. There has to be an election that is in between the voting for the pay raise and it taking effect. That is literally because of a sophomore college student at the University of Texas that we have the 27th Amendment. So the last 2 times we've amended the Constitution is because of college students. No bullshit. True story. So anyone who doesn't think that because they're a college student or they're young and doesn't matter, it's actually the opposite. We've been able to add things to the Constitution. We've been able to make change and progress because of young people, because of college students, because of people who marched for civil rights in the 60s, because of people who created March for Our Lives, because of the Sunrise Movement, because of Black Lives Matter. It is young people who are leading the way. So I look to you guys. You know, I'm a millennial barely. I like barely make it in. But I'm a millennial. But I look to Gen Z as to tell me what to do, to lead the way, because it is your generation's activism and you guys caring and being educated and understanding digital platforms and social platforms and using it to make change. So I really think that you guys and your followers and your entire generation is going to lead us to better days.
Amazing. Oh my gosh,
We hope
Ben,
so.
that's amazing. I feel like you're one of the only people when talking about our democracy has like a hopeful outlook. And then that we've spoken to at least, you know, I mean, obviously not on this tour or anything, but I think in like daily life, there's like a lot of, when it comes to, you know, the leadership with COVID, to Black Lives Matter, and like that very daunting, sentence with the killers of Breonna Taylor. Like seems like there's just so much darkness right now and it feels hopeless, but like the way you talk about it and the way, you know, the way you're speaking, I just feel like really motivated and I feel hopeful and I feel like you're putting it in such a graspable, palpable way for people and specifically young people. You know, I've been reading the comments a bit and I see people getting gassed up in the comments. Yes. We have to vote locally. And I would absolutely love to read your book. Thank you so much for being a part of this. I feel really inspired.
Yeah, I feel stoked. It's been a pleasure to have you. Thanks so much for your time, Ben.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for using your platform to educate and share this information. You guys are doing incredible work.
Thank you so much. And everybody, we're going to post some stories after this. Please go get Ben's book. Give it a read. We're going to be doing that. And then we're going to be posting some of the websites you mentioned, Ballotpedia, openstates.org, and their apps to follow them as well.
So let's get to it. Let's vote.
Get to it.
Let's get involved, peeps. Awesome. Well,
Thank you, Ben.
Bye. Take care.
Bye, guys.